I'm pleased to welcome everyone to the August meeting of the Kinross-shire Local Committee. I'm joined by my Vice Convener, Councillor Dave Cuthbert, and my two fellow ward councillors, plus a number of senior officers from Perth and Kinross Council. We've had a wee discussion. I hope everyone's now familiar with the Teams, how Teams works, and we'll let's carry on from there. Are there any declarations of interest? Okay. Item 3 is the minute of our last meeting on the 13th of June. Can we agree to approve the minute?
I agree.
Okay.
Agreed.
Thank you.
Agreed.
Now can we move on to item 4, matters arising from the minute? And the first one is a road safety update. I'm pleased that Darryl McEwen has joined us, our senior road safety officer, who's going to give us a verbal update on where we are. Darryl?
Thank you, Councillor Robertson. We're currently working through the temporary traffic regulation orders that were installed during COVID. Altogether, we have 65 temporary speed limits that need to be consulted on, and if the communities are agreeable, made permanent. Of those 65, 4 are in the Kinross-shire ward. At the end of the Spaces for People project, when we introduced those limits, a further 31 were put in using our road safety budget, and 7 of those are within Ward 8. So that's 11 in total of these temporary traffic regulation orders that need to be formalised. Drawings are being prepared, most of them are ready, and we're just preparing the covering letters to go out to the elected members, the community councils and Police Scotland. At some of these sites, the proposal is to remove the 40 miles per hour buffer and put in 20 mile per hour speed countdown signs, because we found that they're likely to be more effective because they give the driver a much clearer visual indication of where the start of the village is. But at the majority of the sites, the recommendation is to retain the 20 miles per hour speed limit that was put in. Most of these are in rural communities where there was no footway or poor footway provision. So those drawings will be coming to you very shortly. Following on from that, then the next phase of the sort of the whole speed limit and weight restriction projects, which are covered by these legal documents called traffic regulation orders, we have over 200 requested new sites across the council area. 29 of those are within Ward 8, within Kinross-shire. I've asked our Directorate Support Team to set up meetings with the ward councillors initially to go through the list of projects, the overall list of road safety projects. But I think we particularly want to focus on these new requests for speed limits and weighting restrictions. We'll not be able to process them all straight away. So the intention would be to discuss with the elected members and to find out where the priorities are within the communities. I know there's already been discussion about the likes of Carnbo, bringing it from a 40 down to a 30 and introducing the new 40 miles per hour speed limit between Scotland Well and Auchmuir Bridge. There may be other sites that you want us to prioritise as well. And in advance of that meeting, I will send out the list to the elected members so that you're familiar with that. Following on from that meeting, we would then want to update the community councils as well, because there may be some local issues that you want us to consider. What we have is a list of the projects that have been requested. As far as we are aware, there may be other sites that aren't on the list, and we're keen to make sure that we get those included and get them programmed. Most of the priority work at the moment within road safety is generally is trying to put in the cycling, walking and safer routes. So new footpaths, new cycle paths that have already been agreed with committee. We've just completed the procurement procedure and submitted that for the vehicle activated signs, and there are a number of those within the Kinross-shire area, and the plan is to get those installed this financial year. It is more than likely, though, that the budget that we have won't cover all of the requested sites across the council area. So again, we'll want to prioritise those communities that don't have any vehicle activated signs at the moment, get them in first, and then we can move on to additional signs in some of the communities. So that's where we are at the moment. Councillor Robertson, if anyone has any questions, please feel free to ask.
Thanks very much, Darryl. Have we any questions for Darryl? First of all, I see Richard. No, Sarah first and then Richard.
Thank you, convener. The one, Sarah Bruce Jones, Fossaway District Community Council, the one that's of a priority for us is Carnbow. The residents of Carnbow were assured and promised that the 30-mile speed limit sign would be in from the 40 to 30 would have been in before the summer. It's still not done. We had a meeting, our last community council meeting, we had a massive representation from Carnbow residents about it. They're at the point of breaking. I think at not the last meeting, the meeting before of the committee, there were assurances that the surveys that were going to be done about the extending the 40 to the village hall and out to the east and the west, that wouldn't hold up the 30-mile speed limit sign. But so the two things that they were promised 6 months ago still haven't happened, which is the putting up of the 30-mile speed limit signs and any indication that surveys going on.
In response to the signs, we can't install the signs until the legal document has been processed, which is the traffic regulation order. So it'll still be a few months away before that speed limit is put in place. There's been some surveying done along the route. I was using an infrared counter, and it's part of a series of traffic surveys in the Kinross ward area. So we can forward on that information to you.
Yes, please. I am very disappointed to hear that the change to the 30 still hasn't been approved, because that was agreed 2 meetings ago that was a case that's happening. And for the last, we've got letters from residents where they've had confirmations to say that was happening, that the 30-mile was happening. So
could I possibly, Sarah, it has been agreed that the speed limit will go down to 30. That has been agreed, but Darryl, could you explain again about the legal process that you must go through, that you can't just put them up, you've got to go through a process?
Yeah, there's our legal services will undertake a consultation exercise. The proposed speed limit will be advertised. There'll be a period of time to allow people to comment on it. There are statutory consultees, such as the emergency services. So I mean, all of that takes a period of time. But all along, we've said that our priority has to be to addressing the temporary traffic regulation orders, because they have a limited time period. They will lapse, within a certain period of time. So we have to prioritise those first.
Do you want to come back, Sarah?
Is there any indication of what sort of time frame we're looking at?
There isn't at the moment because of staffing issues, but I'll try and confirm that for you. We'll try and get a date. We can speak to legal services and get an indication from them how long it would take to process the order.
Because I think that I've explained this, it needs to be changed from temporary to permanent, but I don't think the residents, possibly the community councillors and the residents, understood. They were under the impression this had been agreed and it was going ahead, consultation had been done, and there was nothing to hold it up. It sounds now as if there are still issues that could prevent it actually happening.
No, it has been agreed. I mean, we have agreed that the 30 miles per hour speed limit will be put in. We simply haven't started the legal process to create that traffic regulation order document, because we've had to prioritise other areas of work.
Okay.
Could I possibly bring in the head of legal services, Lisa Simpson, she's got a point of clarification.
Yeah,
Lisa?
it was just actually to put some of that into context. The decision has been taken to put these in place. It's been agreed that the speed limit will be put in place, but there is obviously, as Darryl has explained, the statutory process to go through, and also this is not the only traffic order that we are processing. We're processing hundreds of orders, and we have a team of 1.2 dealing with that sort of business. So, you know, it's not a case of it's not getting done. It's getting done as quickly as either the statutory process or resources will allow us to do that. But we are processing many traffic orders at the moment, and the prioritisation has to be on the ones that will lap and are most pressing. But it's not a case that it's not a decision that it's not getting done. It has been decided it will be done, and it will be done as quickly as resources permit. Right,
thanks very much for that. Sarah, have you any more comments to make, or are you happy with that?
I'm
not being happy, but I mean,
I'll probably get lynched at the next community council meeting.
Well, I think they'll be lynching the councillors before they'll lynch you. You'll be in the queue. Okay, thanks for that. Richard, you had a question.
Thanks. I think I'm busy that day, Sarah, but no problem. Darryl, thanks for that update. I think you probably partly answered some of my question, but it was just you were due to have a meeting with the elected members, and I assume part of that will be to run through these lists, and given the pressures that are on you and preparing and putting these traffic orders and various other tasks might be delayed. But any idea when that would be, so we could get a full update on this?
I don't, because that was with our directorate support team to set up the meeting. I don't have access to the councillors' diaries, but what I can do is I can check tomorrow morning and see how far we are through that process.
That would be appreciated, thanks.
Any other questions for Darryl?
I do, please. It's Margaret Compton speaking.
Okay, Margaret, fire away.
Thank you. I was just going to point out that we still have an issue with a 40-mile-an-hour paint on the road in a 30-mile-an-hour limit, and people tend to take more notice of the white paint on the road than the actual traffic signs notifying them of the speed limit. This has been mentioned at a couple of meetings, and it would be really good if we could have a promise that that will be removed at the soonest opportunity, please.
Can I just clarify where the site is, Margaret?
Yes, it's just on the south side of Glenfarg. As you come towards the end of the houses, there's a 30-mile-an-hour limit sign leaving the village towards the Stevens houses, but we have a 40 white paint on the road.
That's fine. I'm sorry that hasn't been addressed. It's not the only site, unfortunately, and we have been pushing our contractor that all of those markings would have been burnt off and amended. So what we'll probably need to do is actually to check them all on the ground and see before we meet with the elected members, but we can prioritise that one. We have lining squads in the area, so we'll try and get that one sorted as quickly as we can. I know there are similar issues over at Wester Bulgedi and Easter Bulgedi, so we'll try and get them all addressed together.
Thank you, Darryl.
Okay, any other questions for Darryl? No. Darryl, thanks very much for your input. I think it's really it really helps for the community councils to know just what the situation is, and I'm really glad you attended today. Neil, have you got a comment to make?
Sorry, Willie. Yes, it's just I was waiting till you finish the section. I noticed you skipped over apologies at the start, and it's just I had an apology to record on behalf of someone.
Sorry,
didn't want it to go missed. So it was just to record apologies from Francis Gillespie of Cleachton-Blairden Community Council. Okay. Unfortunately, he was latterly detained and unable to send a substitute. Thank you.
Okay, thanks so much for that. Okay, thanks, Harold. Can we move on to item 2, verbal update on Blairngone Primary School. Blairngone is the only village in Kinross-shire not to have any community facilities, and the closing of the primary school has given us an opportunity to address this. Can I ask Lee Haxton, the Council's Community Planning Team Leader, to give us a verbal update on what progress has been made to date? Thanks so much. Lee?
Yeah, thank you, Convener. Good evening, everybody. As you'll remember, for those who were in attendance at the first meeting of this committee back in January, we provided a short paper outlining the situation with Blairngone Primary School, and that we were keen to work with an interested community organisation who may wish to take on some form of responsibility through community asset transfer. The group that was identified was the Fossway Community Development Trust, and since then there's been a few conversations with that group, and at the previous meeting in June, 30th of June, I informed committee that there was a meeting that evening, immediately following that committee meeting on site to discuss it in more detail. So since the last committee on the 30th of June, we have received an expression of interest from the Fossaway Community Development Trust for Blair and Gone Primary School. And for those that aren't familiar with it, the way that we operate the community asset transfer process, the first step really is to have that conversation with an interested party, which we've had. They then submit an expression of interest form, which is fairly light touch and just asks them to set out in broad principles what they would like to do with the asset that they're interested in and what benefits they think that would generate for their community. We, within the council, then have what we call the Community Asset Transfer Team, which are a series of representatives from different departments of the council that have an interest in assets, and that could be legal, finance, property, estates, communities. They each then have a look at what's being proposed and provide some feedback to the interested party. We'll then have a first meeting with that group to go over their proposals in more detail and try and help them identify what the best solution might be for them long term. And that could be some form of straight purchase or lease directly with the council, a purchase or lease under other regulations, or a purchase or lease or some form of management access under the Community Asset Transfer provisions of the Community Empowerment Act. So to cut a long story short and get away from the technicalities, we've received, as I said, the expression of interest form. We are collating the responses from the different departments within the council, and we should have that within the next week. The general view so far has been that the detail that's been provided by the Development Trust is not sufficient for us to provide them with constructive feedback, and we really need a little bit more detail from them in terms of what it is ultimately they would like to do with the asset should they take on the responsibility for it, and what benefit that would generate for the Blair and Gone and surrounding communities. I'm advised by the local CLD worker for that area that she is working with the group to provide that additional detail, and once we have that, we'll be in a position to provide some more constructive feedback to them. And regardless of where that feedback takes us, we'll be ready to help them try and find a solution that suits their purposes. Happy to take any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Lee. Have we any questions for Lee on his presentation? Nobody? Oh, it's Sarah, sorry. Right, fire away. And I'll come to you then, Neil. Sarah first.
Yeah, so thank you very much, Lee. That's really appreciated. It was covered in our last community council meeting. The residents of Blair and Gone are keen to get this process through, and the Community Development Trust is very keen to do whatever they can to take it forward. It's good to hear that they've already had the feedback they need from yourselves to what else they have to do. I presume something along the lines of a business plan needs to be drawn up, does it?
Ultimately, if the group decides that they wish to take on full ownership or a long-term lease, then we would normally expect them to provide us with a business plan that would show how they would make that asset work and pay for itself over a period of time, along with some other supporting information like evidence of community engagement and community support. But at this stage, we wouldn't want to burden people too much with that until they have a clearer understanding of what it is they want to do and how we can best help them achieve that.
Yeah, it's going to be one of the items that will be detailed at the Fossaway gathering first week in September. We'll have a display and everything and get as much more engagement as we can from the local residents on that issue. But very keen to get that process through.
Thanks, Sarah. Could I possibly just ask a quick question before I come to Neil? What support is there to the Development Trust in preparing a business plan?
So there's a few sources of support. The council has, through our Community Empowerment Officer, James Gardner, James can provide some broad support across all different aspects of the community asset transfer process, and also help bring in support and advice from other departments within the council. When it comes specifically to business planning, that's not something that we would offer directly, but we would put the organisation in touch with organisations such as PCAVs, Perth and Kinross Association of Voluntary Services, who have an officer that can help with that sort of area of work. And there are other external partners who can also help. Probably the most useful one is the Community Ownership Support Service, which is a national body funded through Scottish Government to provide independent advice. And we would also recommend to the Development Trust that they speak with them to make sure that they're not just taking our word for it, but are getting it from an independent voice as well, if that makes sense.
That's very helpful. Thanks, Lee. Right, Neil, I'll come to you now.
Thanks, Convener. I think my question has largely been answered. It was really just to again find out kind of what was lacking from the expression of interest from the Trust's application. Councillor Cuthbert and I attended the session on site, which was a walk around as well, which I thought was very good, and it was really helpful to have the officer on site to chat about the options available to the community. So I'm really sort of keen to see as much support for them as possible. But it sounds like sort of things are in hand, so it's good to hear things are progressing. Thank you.
Thanks, Neil. Now I've got Councillor Cuthbert would like to comment. Dave?
Yeah, just to say that I'm really supportive of this. I think it's a great initiative. There seemed to be a lot of enthusiasm when we met with the group out at Blair and Gone. So all the support you can give them, keep it coming, basically.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Is everybody happy?
If I may respond, Convener, just to Councillor Freshwater's point around the phrase that was used was lack of detail, which is maybe me being slightly unclear. It's not that they provided a lack of detail. There's a lot of suggestions within the expression of interest form, but it was along the lines of, we could do this, we might be able to do that, it would be nice to be able to offer this, and there were so many that I think what we were needing them was for them to be a bit clearer on what it is they actually would be able to offer within the capacity of the organisation. And we'll of course offer whatever support we can, because there are a lot of, if community asset transfer works well, then it's a win-win for everybody involved.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Lee, for your input, and I think everyone will be reassured with the comments you've made. Anybody else got anything to say on that? Okay, thank you. We're now going on to item 5 and 6, and I'm going to pass over to my Vice Convener, Dave Cuthbert, who's going to take those. I think, Dave, you're going to take paper 6 first.
Yeah, I was going to ask the committee if everybody's happy. I'd like to take paper 6 first. That sets the financial background to what we've got available to distribute. But before I did that, I was just going to give a few words on the Common Good Fund, because it may not be understood by a lot of people. In principle, the Common Good Fund relates to the borough of Kinross. It doesn't relate to the whole of Kinross-shire, but clearly people use Kinross, they come into Kinross, so it's got a bearing on the rest of the area. It's a historical thing, and the money that's currently in the account came from the sale of the town hall. And basically the current position is the councillors have maintained the capital and then distributed the revenue by way of grants and so on to support local groups. So I don't know if anyone's got any questions on that. Otherwise, I'll just pass it straight across to Donald Coyne to lead us through. If you're okay with that, Donald.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, thank you, Councillor. Good evening, everyone. This report is for noting by the committee and provides the unaudited outturn for the Kinross Common Good Fund for financial year ended 31st of March 2022 and the estimated income for the current financial year ended 31st of March 2023. So the unaudited deficit for the fund for financial year 2021-22 is £1,335 and the fund balance at 31st of March 2022 is £157,151. So the period of the low interest rates obviously has impacted on the income available for the distribution of awards. However, the fund balance remains above the ring fence balance of £157,000. So if we turn to the current financial year 2022-23, the estimated income for the year is circa £5,000. This is attributed to interest on the fixed term deposit and the receipt from the sale of land at Meyer Park. So that's it really in a nutshell at the moment. Happy to take any questions if anybody wants to raise anything.
Can I ask you to break down how much the sale of the land is in the accounts and how much the interest is for us?
The interest, that's shown in Appendix 2 to the report, so it's £1,700 for the interest, and I think it's £3,280, is it, for the sale of the land?
Okay, and the basis of that interest, do you want to explain how that works? I mean, it's put on deposit for the year.
Yeah, it's on a fixed term deposit, 12-month fixed term deposit, which is set on February. So at the time we set it, rates were on the increase, so we took advantage of the 12 months at that time. But obviously with the crystal ball, we didn't know there was going to be further rate increases. So the next time for review is the February 2023. And if the Bank of England keeps doing what it does at the moment, interest rates will probably be substantially higher at that point. So I mean, we ring fence, as I say, the 157,000 in the Council's Loans Fund, which is the permitted investment for the common good funds, for all common good funds. And as I say, that's the loans fund sort of acts like the council's internal bank for lending, deposits, investments, etc. And any deposits received, you know, the mainstream rates are on commercial from, you know, for commercial businesses from banks. So I mean, at the moment the rate is 1.1%. We got it on the fixed term deposit.
Okay, thank you, Donald. I see I've got a question from Richard Waters. Richard.
Thanks, Dave. Just a wee question on more than money to do with the sale of the land. You know, are we as elected members, and I think it would be important we take the view of Kinross Community Council in this. But with we as elected members, are we able to add that money to the actual capital side of it, rather than leave it as a revenue that we can spend this year?
That's entirely up to the committee, to be honest. I mean, we've put it in as income for the year. If the, you know, if the committee wanted to ring fence it and say ring fence £160,000, I mean, that's entirely an option as well. It just obviously depends on the applications that you receive for financial assistance awards and whether you can actually make any meaningful contribution.
Okay, thank you for that, Donald. I'm wondering what David Collier would like to say. I don't know if he can. Shall we unmute him? You're muted, David, so.
That better?
That's better, thank you.
Right. I think the Community Council's view would be that it should be put in to the revenue fund and go back to just giving the interest away every year, because the land, if it's all given away in the winner, there's been no advantage to common good fund. I don't know what your thoughts is on it.
So are you saying, David, you'd like to see it ring fenced as part of the 157, but maybe 160? Yep. Okay, does anyone have a counter view to that, or are we all in favour of the ring fencing 160? It looks like everyone's in favour of what you're suggesting, David. So I think that's a conclusion then, that we should ring fence the 160,000, which gives us about £2,000 to play with. Would that be right, Donald?
Apologies, I was muted there. Yeah, £2,131.
Okay, is there any other comments or questions about this paper, or should we move to paper 5? No, I don't see any comments apart from Neil saying that he's in favour of keeping it as an asset. So should we move to paper 5 then, please, Donald, if you could introduce it to us.
Lee will be in charge of the financial assistance paper.
Oh, it's Lee, of course.
Yeah,
sorry.
So, yeah, okay.
Apologies.
More than happy for Donald to do it if he so wishes, but I'm also happy to. Yeah, thanks again, Vice Convener. We have 2 applications to Kinross Common Good Fund. The first is from the Perth and Kinross Scout Group for the international event in Korea next year. The total anticipated cost for the event is £37,000, of which the Scouts are expected to raise the full amount. It's worth noting that that money is not to pay for their attendance, it's to cover the costs of those coming from countries who would have very little opportunity to raise any money to support their Scouts attending. The current funding gap is just under £22,000, and they're expecting two people from the Kinross Common Good area to attend. They have various applications pending, including an application to the Perth Common Good Fund for the other 9 Scouts who they expect to attend from Perth and Kinross. And Perth Common Good Fund is meeting later on, and we expect if the committee agrees to fund it and follows the criteria that are set for the Perth Common Good Fund, that they will award around £900 as a contribution to the overall cost. So committee is asked to agree what, if any, financial support they wish to offer for the two scouts that will be attending from the Kinross Common Good area. I'm happy to pause there if you wish to discuss, or I can go straight on to the next application.
I think you should pause there and we'll see if there's any comments on that. Does anybody have any questions or comments?
Do we have a guarantee that that would be used to promote Kinross Scout movement? Because again, the criteria, as you said earlier on, is for the borough of Kinross. And I feel that questionable if that meets the criteria of this.
Thank you, David. Lee?
My understanding is that any application must demonstrate that it benefits people living within the former borough. So the argument here would be that the two people that would be coming from Kinross would be the beneficiaries. So the application would be valid on that basis.
Thank you, Lee. May I propose that we put £100 towards each child, each scout, in the same basis that Perth are putting in about roughly 100 per scout in their area, so we get award £200. I don't know if people feel that's reasonable.
I would be happy with that, Dave.
I think the Community Council would support that, Dave.
I'm happy with that.
Is there any counter proposal?
No, I was going to suggest similar, so yeah, happy with that.
Did you want to make a comment, Willie?
Yes, I'm aware that there's an active scout group in Milnworth, in Kinross rather, and also an active scout group in Glenfarg. Margaret will confirm if I'm right. So it can only Glenfarg have got a history of sending scouts to jamborees. So I don't know how you manage to ensure that it's only ones from Kinross that can use this money.
Yeah, I think that if I had any concerns, that would be as well. But my understanding was when you made the statement, it was that there was two people going from Kinross. I don't know if we've got any valid proof of that or not.
Okay, well that's good. That's good. Let's just leave it at that then.
I suggest we just leave it at the £200, and then it goes into the funds with the scouts and they use it. If there's two students or scouts coming from Kinross, that covers the criterion. So if we're all happy, shall I move on?
Yeah.
Yep, no comments, questions, right? Okay, moving on to the second application. Lee?
Thank you, Vice Convener. The second application is from King George V Playing-Fields Management Committee. They have a project, a total value of £280,000 to upgrade and extend the pavilion facilities. They have either secured or requested £230,000 from other sources and have asked the Kinross Common Good Fund to make a contribution to make up the balance of £50,000, which is outstanding. The group expect around 1,500 people from the Kinross Borough area will benefit from the project. And again, committees asked to consider what, if any, financial contribution they wish to make.
Okay, thank you, Lee. So in principle, we've awarded £200. We had roughly 2,000 to start with, so that gives us 1,800. Does anyone have a proposal or how much we should give to the pavilion? Are we all happy?
I would propose that we give the balance of the fund that we've got 1,800 to this application.
Okay, do we have any counter proposal, David?
If we gave that amount of money now, does that mean then we would have nothing else to give away for the Common Good Fund for a year?
Until April, yes. Without eating into capital, obviously.
Yeah. I think I'd been inclined to give them £1,000 now and keep something in reserve for other applications that may come in.
Okay, thank you, David. Willie, would you be willing to take that?
I wouldn't sign a ditch over it, but it's just that the KG5 committee do a huge amount for the sport and activity of many people in Kinross and surrounding area. So I'm just keen to support them in any way we can. But they're a very they're a very active group, so I'd imagine if we only give them 1,000, they should manage to attract further funding from elsewhere. They've already got applications into a number of sources, as far as I'm aware. But I'm happy to go with £1,000. If I say to them that if they want to come back at a later date, we would do our best to try and support them further.
Okay, well, I've got comment from Neil Freshwater, if you want to say a bit.
Yeah, I think, again, I like the idea of it because you're kind of reinvesting it in a kind of physical asset for the borough. So I think on that respect, it's good. Again, my question was the question that David Collier raised about, would that then leave us sort of empty if we were to invest the whole or donate the whole amount forward? I suppose my question is a general question about common good funds. How many applications do we typically receive, per annum, or is it very difficult to say? Because obviously, not having been in this scenario before, it's difficult to sort of know what might come up between now and the end of the financial year.
Can you answer that, Donald, or is it just random? Not Donald, Lee, sorry.
Well, Donald might know better than me as he's been involved longer, but it tends to vary. From memory, you're probably, I think, less than 10, certainly less than 10 applications for Kinross over a calendar year. Something between 5 and 6, I think, is about average, but Donald might know better.
Yeah, the last couple of years has sort of been 2 or 3 applications per annum. We usually get one annually for the lights at Kinross as well, which maybe we need to keep in mind as well. So they tend to be earlier on in the year. There tends to be no applications after December time.
And are there any rules to? I noticed that in the paper it notes previous applications. Are there any restrictions on reapplying for funding? Because I was thinking, again, if we were to give them something now, we wouldn't necessarily bar them, giving them some more next year if that was still an option to them. I feel I'm very supportive of the principle, but I do think if we could hold something back just in case something did come up. But so maybe the £1,000 option, I think, is probably where I'm landing.
Okay, do you want to answer that, Lee, or?
Yeah, happy to. There's no restrictions on anybody coming back again for a further application. That's purely for information, so you can understand the context of the group and any previous funding that it's had in the past.
Okay.
Great,
Are you happy with that, Neil?
Yeah.
Okay, Councillor Waters.
Thanks, Councillor Cuthbert. I was going to say as well, we normally get an application in at Christmas time every year. Not that I want to kind of prejudice anything or whatever like that, but I would prefer to see some money left in it. So I would quite happily go with Dave Collier's suggestion of £1,000 and keep the remainder in reserve.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Richard. Does anyone else have any comments or questions? Are we all happy with the £1,000?
Yeah, just one comment. I'm quite sure you as local councillors can pass on word to the rugby club, and they're probably well aware of it, that there is a draw at the end of September from the newsletter charity, and also from one in September from Kinross-shire Fund, where they could probably pick up another £2,000 or £3,000.
Okay, thank you, David. I think Richard Waters has got a question.
No, thank. My belief is that officers will if an application fails or don't get how much they are, officers will come in and help that organisation to locate other funding to help meet their objectives. Is that right?
Absolutely, yes. We would go back, particularly if a group is refused funding or doesn't get the full amount that they're looking for. We would, as a matter of course, give them a copy of our latest funding alert and offer them any assistance we can in helping them to identify other sources of funding that they could apply to.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Lee. Thank you, Richard. I think basically we're going to give the £1,000 towards the KGV. And that concludes paper 5, I think. I don't know if you want to take it back again, Willie?
Okay, thanks, Dave. That actually concludes the business we've got in front of us this afternoon. Can I thank everyone for their attendance, and I think it's always good when you can actually concentrate on local Kinross-shire issues, and I appreciate all your input, both the community councils, the officers and my fellow ward councillors. So enjoy the rest of your evening, and I look forward to seeing you all soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.